Welcome ladies and gentlemen, I am SocioPsycho and this is Mob Reviews, and today we're going to take a look at Lichdom Battlemage. This is created by Xviant, available for PC. It's where you play as a mage, or at least have mage powers, and it's supposed to be really badass and you're a super soldier, powerful mage, instructo, awesomeness, marketing, something bullshit. Let's see exactly how much of that's actually true, and we'll begin in the options menu. Now in the options menu, the game does have a wide variable of screen resolutions, which is definitely nice, as the game's been running at 60 frames per second with no tearing, clipping, or crashing. Now if you have a technical know-how and the systems, you may be able to get it over 60 frames per second, but it is locked at 60 or 30 if that is something you're concerned about. The game does have a large variable of graphic qualities, which is definitely nice to see. Usually in a game, a depth of field and motion blur I turn off, but I didn't really notice it or notice it even to be a detriment in this game. So the level of minute proportion that it is at is good enough not to be a bother, at least not for me. Graphically, the game is decent enough. Yes, some of the magic does look impressive, it looks pretty, and the character animations are okay, but not anything to write home about, but it gets the point across. There is a lot of repetitiveness in the visualizations that you will see, and that I feel is what hurts the game the most, but we'll talk about that more in level design, along with other areas and other topics as we progress forward. Now you do have a brightness slider, which is definitely nice, so you can decide exactly how dark you want your game. One small other thing is they do have a field of view slider, which is definitely appreciated. It's just slightly annoying that it doesn't have a number figure on it, so you may need to trial and error to get the size that you're used to or you prefer. Not a huge deal because I have one, it's just a minor annoyance. It may bug you, may not, no biggie. Now the sound in the game, it's definitely nice to have it broken up on all different sliders, as the dialogue in the game is on par with other games. It's not, oh wow, this is Hollywood-esque, it's amazing, oh, but it's not bad. The voice acting in the game is done well and professional. The music in the game really does hit a good, solid theme. It keeps up the atmosphere and the tension throughout the entire gameplay. The music really gets the point across about the situation, so they've done an excellent job when it comes to the music in the game. There are not really that many controls that you have availability to influence your character with, and it was a little bit surprising to me seeing how the game said that you have over 1,000 spells, which is hot air in its own, and we'll go into it later, but the implementation of what you can do is really limited. And that's shown by the different controls. Are they rebindable? Yes. I've not had any issues in my testing of that, but as you can see here, it has the basics of what you need. So if graphic fidelity and options of optimization are your concern in buying a game, this one will most likely meet your demands. Now, first thing that we're going to talk about is actually the story. The story in the game is very simplistic and also disconnecting from the character. You start off as a shopkeeper and you're putting a piece of jewelry on your sister. The evil villain of the game pops in and says, I want that necklace. And you say, well sir, this necklace is for my sister. You cannot have it. He then decides, okay, if I can't have the necklace, I'll just take your sister and sell her into slavery. Upon which then he knocks you out, you find out that evil man's part of a cult. He's the leader, the cult is evil, and you then gain magical powers by ancient sage. So this may be right here the point that annoys a lot of people from a story, immersive, or aesthetic point of view. You are actually not a mage. Lichdom Battlemage, and you are not a mage. You've never studied magic in your life. You don't have a command understanding of what's really magic is. You have magical bracelets that were given to you. You're like fucking Wonder Woman. You have magical bracelets that utilize your body's energy, but all the magic comes from the master sage who gave you the bracelets. And he's just using you because he's too old. So he's using your energy to be a tool because he's too old to do it himself. So you're pretty much Wonder Woman with fancy bracelets, rather than a battle-hardened, trained, adventurer-style, study-heavy, knowledge-ridden mage who's spent his entire life to a dedication. So now you got that out of the way, you have to say, okay, I may not be a mage in the pure sense of mage, although now I have the availability through the bracelets to use this magic. And the question is, and you can make it philosophical and be like, oh, well, because you have bracelets and you're using magic, you're a mage. But if you take the bracelets off, you can't use the magic, and then what, you're not a mage. So it's not a gig, it's not like a part-time job. Oh, I'm just a mage on the weekends. No, it's not how it works. So now you get back to the fucking story, and what do we got there? Well, you have a story where, okay, I'm a jewelry shop owner, and my sister's been taken. I now have magical power. I know what I'll do. I'll go save my sister, right? Wrong. You decide to embark on an adventure of revenge. I will hunt down this cultist. I will find this cultist, and I will kill him. And throughout the entire game, you have this, oh, here are a memory orb over here. Here is the story pushing me forward more and more into the cultist lair. Cultists are bad. These people are evil. They're doing evil stuff. I must stop them. Except you wanted your sister back. So having vengeance on the guy who sold your sister into slavery is more important to you than actually finding your sister. Wow, that's chivalry. That's definitely worth a fucking effort. Oh, sorry sis, I can't help you while you get bumfucked by a bunch of slave owners because I'm gonna go kill the guy who sold you into slavery instead of saving you. Immersion. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. Is the voice acting through this less than desirable storyline good? Yes. The dialogue that propels forward is good. Is the story really forefront and fundamental? Not really. The story is probably one of the weaker parts in the game. It's there, it has its discombobulated idea of what you need to be doing, and it tells you, you need to be doing this. And you're like, okay. But it's really not anything to get wrapped up in. It's not anything that's amazing or good. It's just sad. But I'll let you hear some of the voice acting now, and you can be a judge at least in that part for yourself.
Here, your shields are weakened. Let the power revive you.
Thanks. Do I want to know where this came from?
It is old magic. Each age of the world casts a long shadow.
I drew on that rift, and there were ghosts in it. You want to tell me what that was about?
Not ghosts, but echoes, reflections of the past, cast by those with ties to you or the cult.
So now we know what the kidnappers are up to. And these echoes supply components for my spells. I'm not complaining.
One more thing that comes to a story is the journal. There's actually a lot of lore that you can pick up that helps sort of read as you progress through to be like, oh wow, so this is what a magic system does, or this is what this village I'm looking at, or some variable. It's not huge, it's not in depth, it's not going to be like a storybook, but it's little notes that you've come across to help sort of fill in maybe gaps that you have about the surroundings. It's not something that is really a huge part of the story, but it may give the lore buffs out there a little bit extra of what they want. So let's talk about the meat of the game. You are a battle mage, right? And they say you are a badass. You have over 1,000 spell combinations. You will be amazing. Yeah, sure. Now, a lot of people most likely pick this game up if they came from a Skyrim or Elder Scrolls style because you have your hands in front and you're like, I got my hands, I can see my hands, I'm super cool, and I can cast spells, and the interface is very minimalistic. Well, with a minimalistic interface, you're just going to have a very minimum control over what you can do. You can switch in between 3 different spell categories. You start off with fire, ice, and a mental contraption which can slow enemies or sort of propel them in the air for a short time. Now, spell combinations is not the accurate description of this. This game is very, very heavy in its crafting. The spells in the game come down to a crafting mentality. Now, as you can see here on this screen, I'm going to do a very basic run over of what this entails, because there are tutorials, there are guides on YouTube which run in between 20 and 40 minutes explaining how to be a spellcrafter in this game. And the game itself does a really bad job at explaining the interface and the action. It is very discombobulated. It's like, wow, what am I looking at? How does this have effect of what I'm hoping for? It's just really hard to understand in the beginning, and even still after playing, you really have to read forums, you have to look at guides. This is one of the few games that I spent a lot of time actually reading up on just to be able to play it. Now, if you're a crafter and you love crafting, then maybe that won't be so hard for you. As you level up, you have something called 2 signal upgrades. When you use magical power and complete fire or the element goal, you can eventually upgrade that ability. As you see here, you have completed a fire goal, and therefore I have the availability to spend a point on a choice of an item that I want. And the same thing here. So given a tiny little upgrade to those abilities, it'll be a little bit stronger. But the strength does not come from actually leveling up. Those are very minor, they might over time feel stronger, but the true strength of the game comes from the crafting of spells. And you think, awesome, okay, I learned spells, how do I learn spells, and how do I craft? What is this? How do I combine spells? Because that's the beauty of it, right? It said over 1,000 spells? Yeah. I was hoping for the crafting system to sort of be like Elder Scrolls Oblivion, the mage system, where you had a wide berth of spells, and you could combine any spell together that you wanted. Hey, I want to have flaming something and summon it, and poof, there we go. This is not like that. While there are different schools of magic, you have fire, corruption, necromancy, lightning, kinesis, and so on, you don't gain new spells or powers by actually leveling up. It's not like a skill tree or a character progressional tree. It is completely a farming tree. You pick up runes as you kill enemies or complete certain tasks that are combat orientated, and you get these runes and there's a loot chance, and if you continue through the game and you don't die, your loot rarity gear drop rate will get higher. If you die, it resets. So the longer you stay alive, the more likely are you to find rarer items. You find rarer enchantment, and then you craft those enchantments, and then you equip those enchantments into the spell you have. There's not thousands of different spells. There's 8 schools and maybe 24 spells, because each school you can have 3 different attack types. What's different, or what makes it more powerful, or what makes it a little augmented here and there, are the gems. It's like, oh, instead of lifting somebody up in the air with kinesis, I can now suck them into a void. Sure, that may be cool. That may feel awesome. That may really be like, I feel like a badass. The only problem is that I have to farm, and 36 hours later, then maybe I'll feel like a badass. But in my playtime so far of 12 hours, feeling like a badass has not exactly hit me. And I've been bored well before 12 hours. By the 2-hour mark, I was falling asleep because the combat was so boring. The game relies on the atmosphere of, oh, we are so strong and the spell combinations you have are so powerful. But the work required, the entry bar, is so high that it's just insane. You have to put in so many hours of play before you can even start to enjoy a sense of power. Before you can even be like, ha ha ha, I'm amazing. But then what? Okay, you're amazing. So when we want to craft an item, we simply drag one of the runes over, and then we have the availability to pair it up with a secondary, and it will increase, based on what runes you use, the stats of the spell. It's pretty much that simplistic. And then you can craft it and be like, okay, I can equip it now, or I can wait and craft something else. And if I want to go in and be like, manually equip it, I can see the spell I created on the left side, and I can hit shift for all the extra details, and I can compare it by hovering my mouse over to what I currently have, and I can get an idea. So it comes down to what items you find in order to create something powerful. It's not a, oh, I'm progressing forward and now I have a stronger spell that I want to unlock. oh, there are skill trees and I want to get that one spell so I can feel more powerful and use these spells in combination. Or, oh, I'm going to use my ice with my flame in some combinational spell or something. I don't know. But you can't combine spells like that. You can only augment. This game is all about augmentation. And if you don't want to deal with a crafting system, they do have a smart inventory upgrade style thing where it just takes your runes that you've gathered up and you have the ability to upgrade them. Now, as you increase in your powers, you can craft improvements as well, which allow you to gain a little bit stronger as you progress through. It's very straightforward, and if you're looking for some sort of amazing crafting system, if you're looking for something that is supposed to be, oh wow, I never knew I could create a spell like that, you're not going to find it. This doesn't have that sort of customization. Yes, you can upgrade certain runes, you can deconstruct certain runes, you can reforge certain runes. If you know about crafting, then you're probably all like, I'm on top of this. If you don't know anything about crafting, well, like I said, this is a review, not a guide. And it would take way too long to jump into how complicated the crafting really is. Because it's not straightforward. The crafting system is not some sort of easy, interface-based, okay, I'm going to organize all the spells that I have. I can clearly see what all my spells do. I understand all the structures of everything. It's going to take a lot of work to just get by in this game. Now, I expect if you want to master a game, any game, if you want to master it, it's going to take work, of course. That's expected. But for the level of work required just to be able to survive, to play, to enjoy is way too high. It's ridiculous. So what are the spells in the game? And the spells do have weight, sure. If you progress long enough, and you farm hard enough, and you get lucky, and you don't die, and you find the correct runes, and you upgrade these correct runes, and you may get a spell that's impressive. And you may end up with a, wow, this spell is so cool looking, or this spell is so awesome. Or wow, I can summon if I have the correct runes that give a proc chance, random off of other runes that are legendarily hard to find. I may be able to summon some big stone scary monster, or I may be able to summon a bunch of skeletons or something like that. But it's about farming. It's about finding what you want. And the combat of it and how you feel is not impressive. Sure, some of the spells are cool. They look cool, they have a cool animation, and you're like, haha, oh man, that guy just got ripped apart. But unless you're the type of person who would rather play a game on God mode than actually be challenged, the game is not fun. Tactically, you just, oh no, there are monsters, I better hide behind this wall. Oh no, they're coming. Or oh no, I have melee in my face. Then I'll just slow them in some fashion, whether it be a ground paralyzation, a slow type grease, something. And you just pick them off. The game runs like a first-person shooter using magic, except every spell you have a reload charge of 2 seconds. So in a first-person shooter where you can unload a clip of 30 rounds in a heartbeat, and you're running out of ammo and you're like, oh, what's happening? Here you have an unlimited amount of mana supply, you have a limited amount of spells, and you have enemies which only continue to increase in their sponginess. The enemies aren't really tactical. You don't have the usage of spells. It's not like, oh no, there's 6 archers over there, and there's 4 melee, and there's 2 mages. I better summon some zombies, lay down a shield barrier of ice, and cast a magic pixel dust fuck fairy. I don't know. But something. And here we have nothing. It's the same repetitive garbage of, oh no, enemy. Hold down button, wait 2 seconds, cast. Hold down button, wait 2 seconds, cast. As I said, do some of the animations look cool? Yes, they do. We've been over this. But the time in between, the fluidity of a combat, the lack of intelligence the AI has. Oh no, there's an enemy. It's gonna try to kill me. What do I do? It's so easy to manipulate, to destroy, to gain an upper hand via advantage. The only hard part in the game are the bosses because they might hit you for really hard, or in between bosses that are summoning ads as well. the combat is not difficult, and you can easily get around the bosses with more control spells. You need your main damaging spell, and you need a control spell to slow the environment, to freeze the enemy, to freeze the boss. If a boss teleports right on top of you, but you freeze him before he hits you, then there's no damage done. It doesn't mean that the battle may not be difficult, but outside the boss fights, the rest of the entirety of the game, it tries to play like a hack and slash. It really tries to throw enemies and an army status against you, and you're supposed to wean through them like, oh, look at me, I'm so awesome, I have all these spells and powers. Except the speed of how you cast is so slow. You're a battle mage, but you have to be on the front line, okay? But I'm just dodging around all the time. So it's not like I'm using spells and I'm like, knockback, fireball, ice shield, magical fucking pixie dust. No, it's, oh no, fireball, teleport, fireball, teleport, ice ball, teleport, fireball, teleport. You know, some variation of bullshit like that. And this comes down to the level design and character design. The majority of the game, you see nothing but a ice land, a frozen tundra, mountains of snow, cave crystals. It opens up a little bit here and there, sure, but a good 60% of the game is snow. And while it may look nice at first, the aesthetic gets really old really fast. Now maybe this wouldn't be the case if combat was more intriguing or more fast-paced, it had more availability, more tactical sense, capability, but that in between the fact that the enemies are also exactly the same. You know, when you look back and you play a game like Diablo, Diablo 1, Diablo 2, and you wade through a horde of enemies, you kill through so many enemies so fast, and you have different fights and different zones and different enemies, and you never feel like, oh wow, there may be so many, but it's all the same. It fits the aesthetic. There are not that many different types of enemies. You have skeletons that are melee, cultists which are melee, skeletons which are ranged, and magic cultists. The skins are pretty much the same, slight variables to differ in between the slight magical differences in their abilities. But when you spend all this time continually fighting against the exact same monsters again and again and again, it gets annoying, tedious, repetitive, boring. It's like, oh no, here comes the skeleton that I've seen for the 567th time. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll blast him with the same spell that I've killed the other 566 skeletons with. Wow, this is fun. It has such a linear pathway. In some spots, it does open up a tiny bit from a linear, straightforward one path through the entire game. It opens up occasionally here and there to two paths, but that second path is a short dead end that may or may not have a optional combat farming zone, a little event or something that, oh wow, I can kill these enemies in here and get more crafting material. So what does that leave us with? Well, it leaves us with a game that graphically is decent, crafting wise is a nightmare in between the interface, the understanding. You're going to have to read a lot just to understand the basics. And then even though you understand the basics of crafting spells, you're not crafting spells, you're crafting augmentations for the spell. And you don't have a whole bunch of spells. Yes, some of these baseline spells will add an extra ability, but it doesn't change. Oh wow, I went from doing an orbital strike with a fireball to now doing an orbital strike that does burn damage. Is it helpful in some scenarios? Sure, absolutely. But does that really make it a completely different spell? You're still using the exact same power and damage and capability. You may say we have all these different types of augmentations, but the spell differences are so small. You can obviously say, yes, making a shield wall out of ice or firing an ice missile is completely different than summoning a zombie. But is summoning a zombie versus summoning a zombie that's on fire really that different? And it's the minor nuances that they try to make the difference in, while limiting you to so few spells in the availability tool to control and command at once, that hurts the game more than anything else. The tactical element has no tactical capability to it. The combat has no tactical element to it. It's the same enemies over and over again. It gets repetitive and boring. In between the fact that you have to farm continuously, not to feel like you're losing in a power struggle against your opponents as you progress through the game, they get more spongy. Oh, instead of them dying in one shot, now I have to charge up this 2-second ability fireball or whatnot before I can cast it twice or 3 times. The same animation, the same enemies, the same over and over again. So yes, is there room for this game to be powerful and feel like I am a mage and these are my cool abilities? Sure, but it's wasted in this game because the world doesn't respect your time. It wants you to work for every single thing. Every inch of power you gain, you have to work for rigorously, only for it to be soonly obsolete because of the sponge-like opponents. On top of the fact that death really isn't a big deal. Sure, you have 3 shields, and if you die, then you just load back up to a checkpoint, so you lose time or possibly have to fight through some enemies again or whatnot. But the only thing that happens is you get a loss of your loot rarity level. It gets reset. Did I enjoy my gameplay time? And the answer is simply no, I did not. Because I never once, even in the beginning when I was fighting against level 1 type monsters, and they're like, hey, you can kill them in one shot, I never felt progressed. I never had a sense of progression. I was never like, oh wow, the powers I have purpose or meaning. Okay, congratulations. Because in this game, if you do put in the hard work, and you do farm, and you do put in all the effort and knowledge needed to craft a great and true and powerful spell, then it's no different than just typing in a cheat code in some games and saying, yay, now I'm playing in God mode, where I can't die and I can kill enemies in 1 hit, or 2 hits or something. So if you are that type of player, the type of person who likes to just run around in a God mode style with really no satisfaction for hard work completed, and just enjoy seeing things get blown apart, on top of loving a very difficult and time-consuming crafting system that is really poorly interfaced, combined with the fact that you'll need to spend many hours, many hours, do not take that lightly, many hours farming for the enchantments, for the spells. Again, it is not over 1,000 spells. It is maybe 1,000 different type of augmentations. Can I create a zombie with an aura of confusion or a aura of slow that makes my enemies that get near him slow down? Can I create a zombie that will explode? Not that I've experienced. Maybe some variables of those are in the game through augmentations. But they are not like a skill tree. They are not like a combination. They are not a take these 2 spells and combine them and add different power elements to them and crystals or something and see what happens. Because there's no mana bar in the game, you just continuously have power, it becomes a spam fest. I have never felt like I've progressed so far in the story and yet gained next to nothing while playing. It's just sad. It does not respect your time, and frankly, I found it a waste of time. Now maybe you'll feel different and maybe you'll like it, and if so, then good on you. But this is not one I can recommend. The combat is boring, slow, the enemies are very similar and all the same. It's just a giant game of repetitiveness that you can only escape by an insane X amount of hours to feel more powerful. It's not worth it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I've been SocioPsycho with Mob Reviews, and I thank you for watching, and I hope this has been helpful to you, and I'll see you next time.